Welcome, everybody, to the 2020 Hempfield NFL Mock Draft Roundtable discussion. I'm Colson Hunt, and I will be your moderator for this HSDTV7 special. Tonight, conducting the draft are three high school experts, if you will, and they are Ben Marinas, Zach Roda, and the great Kasey Kreider. Tonight, each expert will walk through the first round of the upcoming draft, giving their opinions on what will happen for each team coming this Thursday, April 23rd. All right, are we ready to get started here with the first pick? And that is going to be the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm going to start with Kasey. Who goes first overall?
All right, so there's been talk about this. There's been talk about who's going to go where. And there's a lot of rumors floating around, but I think the Bengals, they're just going to keep this pretty simple. They're going to take the best quarterback in college football right now, coming off statistically the best season for a quarterback in college football history. They will take a fellow Tiger, Joe Burrow, number one overall.
All right. And, Ben, have anything to add to that?
I mean, best quarterback prospect since at least as far back as Andrew Luck. This is a no-brainer. Joe Burrow at number one.
And Zach, anything else?
When it comes to quarterback prospects, there's two major things you look at: talent and skill. Talent you're born with and you just cannot control. Skill you can control, and that comes from hard work. Talent, Burrow has, I'd say, solid talent, but skill is superior. It makes him far above all the other quarterbacks in the class, and even in recent history. And if you just watch his film from last year, he was always making the perfect read and just seeing things that most do not see at the college level. And just look at the major increase of skill he got in that 1 year. Yeah, there's a lot to work with there.
All right, so that first pick seems pretty obvious. We'll move on to number 2, the Washington Redskins.
Yeah,
I'll start with Zach this time.
Okay.
We'll go in reverse order.
Chase Young, simple. Ron Rivera wants to get the best defensive player. Well, not even just the best player, I'd say, still on the board. It's simple. I'd write that in as a lock.
Ben?
I'm tempted to call it a lock, but I could see Washington doing something screwy here just because it's Washington. But you got to take Chase Young. He is just so good. He's the type of guy who can have an Aaron Donald type impact on your D-line.
And Kasey, anything to add?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question here. Honestly, I think you could make an argument Chase Young is the best player in the draft, including Joe Burrow. But obviously the Bengals need a quarterback. Even though you could make an argument the Redskins still kind of need a quarterback, I think they need Chase Young a lot more. He's a once-in-a-generation type talent based off what we've seen. He could really make some damage and be a force to reckon with in the NFC East, where I know my buddy Zach is going to be watching for a number of years to come. So I think we'll have to see how this all unfolds. But Chase Young.
Dude, what are we going to do without Halaputi Vaitai and Jason Peters? No one's going to stop Chase Young.
You want to have all those injury timeouts every game.
Okay, it seems like pick 1 and 2 are pretty solid and in the books already. Let's go to number 3 with the Detroit Lions. Ben, you start this one off.
So here's where I get a little bit weird. I do not have the Lions selecting here. I have the Los Angeles Chargers trading up from number 6 to make the wrong selection in taking quarterback Justin Herbert. Personally, I think he is maybe the 4th or 5th best quarterback in this draft. Doesn't hold a candle to Tua, but the Chargers, they're just going to see he's healthy. He's 6'6", big, strong guy. And then the Wonderlic scores came out earlier this week. Herbert was up there towards the top of this class, and Tua had the lowest score amongst quarterbacks in this draft class. Yeah, I could see a franchise going with Herbert. Chargers obviously need a quarterback. I don't like this move. I think it's wrong, but I think it's something that could happen.
All right, Zach, what do you think about this one?
Well, I think they're going to go with Jeffrey Okudah out of Ohio State because Darius Slay went to my favorite team, the Philadelphia Eagles. And didn't they sign like Desmond Trufant?
Is he relevant?
Yeah.
Well, anyways, that's not going to cut it. So Okudah it is, I think.
All right, and Kasey, you have anything else to add there?
So I have something a little bit more interesting, about on the same level as Ben. I think Miami trades up. And why I think this is going to happen is I think they're going to want to protect against anything that the Chargers or any other team that's looking to trade up to a quarterback might want to do. Detroit has said they're willing to trade out the number 1 pick or number 3 pick. So I think Miami trades up, almost like what we saw with Mitch Trubisky and the Bears a couple of years ago. Even though that didn't work out, the strategy is still similarly the same. So I think Miami trades up to protect anyone from getting the guy they want. And the guy that I see them taking, there's been talk, will they take Herbert? Will they take Tua? Just going back all the way to last year, you just have this feeling it's going to be Tua to Miami. And I just have this gut feeling that's going to stay the same. I think Tua Tagovailoa will be a Miami Dolphin in 3 days' time. And I think that will be a good move for them if he can stay healthy.
All right, so there we have our first little bit of discrepancy between who's going number 3. Let's move on to number 4, where the New York Giants have the pick. Kasey, start this one off.
So there's a lot of places New York can go with this pick. And, Ben and I have been talking. We think they need an offensive tackle big time. But I just see them being too tempted by arguably the most versatile player in the draft, certainly on the defensive side, in Isaiah Simmons. And I think there's just something about a defensive, versatile player on defense that Dave Gettleman's going to fall in love with. I think he is probably the best player still on the board. You could definitely argue it's not a position that the Giants maybe need as much, but I think they're going to go with Isaiah Simmons out of Clemson. You can play him really anywhere on the defense. I think he'll play mainly as a linebacker in the NFL, but I think the Giants are going to try and take a defensive talent that they think can play anywhere on the field. I don't know if that's the right call, but I think that's what they're going to do.
Ben?
Similar to Kasey, I have Isaiah Simmons. I don't know if it's the right call either. Jeff Okudah is still available in my draft, at least. I think that would be a smarter move. Trading down a few spots, looking for an offensive tackle, somewhere in the 8 to 14 range, I think would be a good move. Simmons is obviously a very good player, but the Giants, they invested heavily in linebacker this offseason. But Gettleman just loves his versatile defenders. He just seems like the kind of guy that front office goes for a lot.
And we'll go to Zach now. What do you think is the Giants' pick?
I have Simmons as well. I feel like offensive tackle is obviously a need, but there's plenty that they could maybe trade up into the first round to get, or even the second round. If one of them falls, they could take one. And there's only one Isaiah Simmons. So in their kind of, let's just say, bad defense, I feel like he's versatile enough to play wherever they really need him, as long as it makes sense for their scheme.
All right, and then we'll move on now to pick number 5, where as it stands now will be to Miami. Ben, do you think that will hold up?
I do, and much like Kasey at number 3, I have them taking Tua. It's been a thing. It's been a connection for over a year now. And Miami, they have the picks later in the first round to fortify that offensive line, keep Tua upright. And it's just scouting isn't something that changes in a week or two. I know there's been a lot of reports they're falling in love with Herbert. That's all a smokescreen, I think. They're looking for Tua. And I think they get their man here at number 5.
Kasey, what do you think, number 5?
So the way I have this trade from earlier working is I have Detroit getting number 5 from Miami along with maybe a few later round picks. So I have Detroit picking here, and I think they will take a position that they desperately need, and that is cornerback. They will take Jeff Okudah from Ohio State. He was, along with Chase Young, one of the best defensive players in the country last year, playing the secondary as a future Penn State student. That pains me a little to say, but you can't deny he was a heck of a cornerback, and the Lions need their Darius Slay replacement, and I think they'll be willing to get it at number 5 with him.
And Zach, what do you have here?
I'll keep this simple. Tank for Tua comes full circle. They're going Tua.
Okay, and I think with that we can move on to number 6 here, which as it stands now is the LA Chargers. We'll start this one with Ben. No, Ben started the last one. Zach, your turn.
Another quarterback going right off the board. I see Justin Herbert falling right into their lap. I agree with, what was it, Ben, who said they're going to trade up?
Yes.
That would make sense, but I feel like they won't even have a need because he's just going to fall right into the 6th spot.
Ben, your name was mentioned. I'll let you go now. We'll do this political style.
All right. Because of that trade earlier, I have Detroit picking here at 6. And I find it funny. We have 3 different mock drafts, Detroit picking at 3 different spots. In all of our mocks, they get Jeff Okudah, be it at 3, 5, or 6. I think the other two have explained it pretty well. He's the best corner in the draft, and Detroit needs a corner.
Kasey, anything to add for pick number 6?
So I do have the Chargers staying here, and I think, as Zach said, they are going to take Justin Herbert. They need a quarterback. You know, you can question some of the abilities of Justin Herbert's game. I know Ben's not high on him. I'm going to wait and see what happens. Obviously, he finished off great at Oregon, but I think, you know, the Chargers also have an opportunity where they don't have to start him right away. They can play Tyrod Taylor. And, you know, teams always say in the NFL that, you know, they're going to let the rookies all sit for a year and play behind a backup. But it seems like by week 4, you know, those rookies are always somehow in the starting lineup. I don't know if that's going to happen with the Chargers, and I don't know if Herbert will be ready for that. But I think he's got enough upside that the Chargers are going to be willing to make that pick and try to get their new QB in the future, because this is the first time they've really been in the market for a quarterback since the 2004 draft, I think it was, when they drafted Rivers. So here they are.
All right, that'll surely be an interesting pick. We have a lot of different opinions on who picks. Now we'll move on to number 7, where the Carolina Panthers hold the pick right now. Kasey, start that one off for us.
So I have them taking Derek Brown, defensive tackle out of Auburn. I think simply he's one of the better players still left on the board for them. I got to be honest, I haven't done a ton of research on him, but from what I've seen, he's a guy that can be a big threat defensively and a big force up front. I think Carolina is going to need that with a new head coach and a rebuilding team. They get a young building block here at number 7.
Zach, who do you think goes 7?
Well, they just got Matt Rule, so they're kind of entering the beginning of a rebuild, I'd say. It's definitely going to take at least 2 years before they're back on the map again, recovering after Ron Rivera. And they're going to go with the best player available. They're going to go with the big boy out of Auburn, Derek Brown, to plug up that middle up front.
Interesting take there. What about you, Ben?
I say let's make it a sweep. I also have Derek Brown. I think, other than Chase Young, probably the highest floor of anybody in this draft class. You start building your defense with the fat guys up front. Makes it easier on everybody behind them.
All right, and then I'll move right on to number 8 with you, Ben. Arizona Cardinals have it right now. What do you think?
I'm thinking they're definitely taking an offensive tackle here. I don't think that's too controversial. The question is which one. All of them are still on the board. Especially with not a lot of pre-draft workouts being able to happen. Might be a time to take Andrew Thomas out of Georgia, but I've seen Tristan Wirfs linked to them for a long time, killed at the combine. Great, technically sound player. I have them going with Tristan Wirfs out of Iowa.
Kasey, what are your thoughts there? Pick number 8.
Ben basically said everything better than I could. So he knows a lot more about the offensive lineman than I do. I have Tristan Wirfs going at number 8. We were talking, and I agree with this. I think the offensive tackles, in theory, could go just about in any order. It's a bit of a toss-up. But as Ben said, it seems like the Cardinals and Wirfs have been kind of tied together for a little while, and I think they make that marriage happen on April 23rd.
All right. And then, Zach, what do you think about the Cardinals pick, number 8?
I also have Tristan. Kyler Murray is a little man, and you don't want him dying year 2, so you got to protect him. Seal that offensive line on the left side or right side, depending on where you put him.
All right. Now we'll move on to what might be my personal favorite pick in this first round, and I'll have Zach start this off. As it stands, the Jacksonville Jaguars have the 9th pick, but I think we're all predicting something else. Go ahead, Zach.
Well, I actually do not have the Philadelphia Eagles trading up into this spot. I actually have the Atlanta Falcons trading up into this spot and selecting C.J. Henderson. I feel like he's the best corner left, and I've been seeing their name linked to him for a while now, so I feel like it's just going to come into full circle.
All right, then I'll go to Ben here. What do you think happens pick number 9?
The way I see it, there's a very low chance Jacksonville picks here. And there are 3 teams I could see trading up. The Falcons for a corner, or the Broncos or the Eagles for a wide receiver. As I told Colson earlier, I have the Philadelphia Eagles trading up to number 9 for CeeDee Lamb out of Oklahoma. I think it's a toss-up between him and Judy for top receiver in the draft. The Eagles seem to like Lamb a little bit more, so they
I seem to like Lamb a little bit more too. All right, Kasey, what do you think happens pick number 9?
So I got a couple things going on here in the next few minutes or next few picks or so, but I got to go with Ben on this one. I think Philly, you could tell they needed a wide receiver last year. Who knows what their wide receiver core is going to look like this year with Jeffrey and Jackson all being question marks. And then your next best option is J-Jaw. And that didn't pan out so well from last year. So I think, quite simply, they take the best receiver in the draft. That's CeeDee Lamb, and I think he'll be a role player for them. But he's not going to be Philly's not going to be the only team, I think, trading up for a wide receiver here in these coming picks.
Gee, who else could it be?
All right, before we jump ahead here, let's go. Pick number 10 right now is with the Cleveland Browns. Kasey, where do you think that goes?
All right. Yeah, that's not going to happen in my mind. I think, I think Denver is going to follow the lead of Philly. For a while, I actually had them trading up to number 9 and taking CeeDee Lamb. But what I think is going to happen is I think Philly's going to trade up first, and they're going to take CeeDee Lamb. They seem to like him. We're going to trade up to 10 because you look at the teams that are ahead of Denver right now, who picks 15 in the draft. The Jets, Raiders, Niners all need wide receivers. Denver's got to leapfrog them to get the player they want, I think. So I think they will go up to number 10, and I have seen them in recent days be tied a lot to Jerry Jeudy, and so I think that's where they're going to go. They're going to pair him outside with Courtland Sutton. Jerry Jeudy is coming to Mile High, so Drew Lock can throw to him.
All right, Zach, go ahead and follow that one up.
Well, this is where the Eagles will be picking, and it will be CeeDee Lamb, much like you guys had it. I just feel like that's the perfect spot for them to trade up into. And come on, the Eagles are not walking away from the first round without a wide receiver. Whether they trade up or not, they're going to have someone. Because in free agency, we addressed corner, got that need, I'd say, pushed aside for now. And the only major hole left on our roster, I'd say, is wide receiver. And that needs to be fixed in the first round. Otherwise, it's going to be a long season next year, throwing to J-Jaw and D-Jax for maybe 3 games.
All right, Ben, anything to add for pick number 10?
I guess I'm the only one who has Cleveland staying here. They desperately need a left tackle, and I have them getting so close to the right guy. I have them taking Jedrick Wills out of Alabama. My big concern here has nothing to do with Will's talent. Played at Alabama. They're pretty good at this whole football thing, I guess. But my big concern is Wills spent his entire career on the right side of the line. And the Browns just signed Jack Conklin to a big contract in free agency, who's also played on the right side of the line, at least throughout his entire NFL career. And whichever one of them has to move to the left, that's a big transition for him. And we don't know what training camps are going to look like this year. So I almost like this pick, but I can't quite give the Browns front office the benefit of the doubt that they're going to do this right.
All right. And then we'll go to pick number 11, who, as it stands now, is with the New York Jets. Ben, why don't you start that one off for us?
I have them taking a receiver. I have them taking one of Alabama's 2. But I have them going with Henry Ruggs over Jerry Jeudy. I think with Robbie Anderson gone, they need speed, and more speed. And Henry Ruggs is – I've heard him called Tyreek Hill without the off-the-field issues. He is just so fast, game-breaking speed. And if he's as good as he was in college, then Sam Darnold's going to be a happy man for a few years.
All right, Kasey, what do you think happens pick number 11?
All right. Well, Robbie Anderson wore number 11 in New York. Henry Ruggs wore number 11 in Alabama. Now he's going to be wearing number 11 in New York next season as the Jets pick him at number 11. I think by default here, I think they could go with Jeudy if he's still on the board. But I agree with Ben. The Jets need some speed. This is going to be a big year for Sam Darnold in his third year. It's time to start stepping up, and he needs weapons to do that. I think Henry Ruggs is the perfect guy.
And it seems like the stars are aligning for him. Zach, what do you think happens for the New York Jets?
Yeah, I'll keep it simple. I also have Henry Ruggs going there. I can already hear Adam Gase foaming at the mouth from where I'm sitting right here. So, yeah, that's the pick I think it will be.
And we'll move on to pick number 12 now, which currently stands with the Las Vegas Raiders. We'll start off this one with Ben.
The run on receivers continues. I have the now Las Vegas Raiders taking Jerry Jeudy from Alabama. A lot of arguments say he's the best receiver in the class, so to be the third one drafted and fall to 12, it's a great value for the Raiders. They've needed a star receiver since the whole Antonio Brown thing, and best player on the board, and he's a need. It just fits perfectly.
All right, Kasey, what do you think?
Well, I hope for your sake, Jerry Jeudy is the best player in my draft because I have him going to the Broncos. But we'll see. For the Raiders, so they're in an interesting spot now because in my mock, the 3 spots ahead of them, all the top 3 receivers are gone. So as much as even though they need a receiver, I don't see them getting it here. I think they're going to wait until the second round, try to get some value out of it. You look to the Raiders last year, they had one of probably the best draft of any team in the NFL last year, just the value they got out of some of their picks. They took Cleveland Farrell and Josh Jacobs first round, and then they got a lot of studs in later rounds, guys like Trayvon Mullen, Max Crosby, Hunter Renfrow, all young guys who they can develop. So I think they go in a general direction with that here. I have them taking Javon Kinlaw out of South Carolina, defensive tackle. I think that's going to help them shore up a little bit up front. Raiders defense has struggled the past couple of years. I think that's going to help out as they're still kind of looking for that Khalil Mack type disruptor that they haven't had since they traded him away to Chicago.
All right, and Zach, what are your thoughts here?
Ben hit the nail right on the head for me. I also have Jerry Jeudy there. So he said basically everything I had to say about that.
All right, so then we'll move on and we'll go with you first. Pick 13 currently stands with San Francisco. Zach, who do you have going there?
Kind of similar to an Andre Dillard type of situation last year with the Eagles. I see them going Jedrick Wills here, the future heir to Joe Staley's left side. Kind of give him a year to be groomed under Joe, and then when Joe decides to hang it all up, he'll be there ready to fill in, take action.
Ben, I'll go to you next. Number 13.
Oh, man. Kasey and Zach are going to get a kick out of this one. Niners probably want to get a receiver here. Top 3 receivers are gone. But I have them taking one anyway, and I have them taking Laviska Shenault Jr. out of Colorado. This is by far the most out there pick in my mock, and probably the most out there pick in Zach or Kasey's. But there's a lot of reasons to like this. Shenault was just a pure weapon in college. With the amount of jet motion Shanahan runs, it helps having a guy who's dangerous running the ball on a jet sweep, doing that stuff. And Chenault's pretty darn good at that. I think I'm just trying to convince myself for this because I want to see Shenault on the Niners, but he's probably there at 31, and they're probably better served taking a corner here. I'm not sure what I was thinking, but if it happens, I'll be a genius. When it doesn't, okay then.
All right, very interesting take there from Ben. Now, Kasey, what do you have there?
So I could see them going a couple different directions with this. They could take a wide receiver. They could take a corner. They could completely trade out of this pick. And honestly, that might be the most realistic thing. They don't have a pick in the second, third, or fourth round, but they have 2 first-rounders. But in this draft, since we didn't have people trading in and out of rounds, I'm going to keep San Francisco here. And I, like Ben, I'm going to say they take a receiver, not Laviska Shenault, though. I'm saying they go with Justin Jefferson out of LSU. He's a speed guy. Remember, they don't have Emmanuel Sanders anymore, and they need someone to complement with Deebo Samuel, a guy who can do a lot of those jet motion stuff. But I think Jefferson's a little bit more of a complete receiver. And I think that's what the Niners need right now in their passing game, especially if Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be successful. I think it's a bit of a reach to take Jefferson here, but I don't think they can get him at 31, and I think they just need a receiver too badly. So they take a position of need right now and take maybe the best receiver still on the board.
Not as big of a reach as Chenault.
All right, and then we'll go to Zach here. Who do you have going 13?
For 13, didn't we just do 13?
I'm sorry, 14. You're right. Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 14.
Okay, I was about to say. So for this, I definitely see the Buccaneers going offensive tackle. And it's between two guys for me, either Becton or Andrew Thomas. I personally feel like Andrew Thomas is the better prospect, which is why I think the Bucs are going with Becton. So, yep, locking Becton there at 14 for me.
All right, we'll go to you, Ben. Tampa Bay.
Like Zach, I have an offensive tackle. Unlike Zach, I have Andrew Thomas out of Georgia. I think with Tom Brady there, I don't know if you heard about that, but he's a Buccaneer now. They definitely are looking to win now. Andrew Thomas is probably the most pro-ready tackle prospect of anybody. Definitely a lot more pro-ready than Becton. I see him as a developmental prospect, and you'll hear my opinions on him a little bit later. But Thomas is probably the highest floor guy that the Buccaneers can pick, and you got to protect Tom Brady.
All right, and Kasey, who do you have going 14?
All right, I have an offensive tackle, but his name is not Makai Becton. His name is not Andrew Thomas. If you notice, I haven't selected Jedrick Wills yet in this draft. I think he goes right here to the Bucs. They need somebody to shore up that line for Tom Brady. He's old. He can't move. He needs an offensive line. He's got his receivers now, and now he needs to have time to throw to him. I think Jedrick Wills is a good prospect, and I think the Bucs honestly get a steal here by him falling to 14. I think that's what's going to happen, and I think he could wind up there, and that'll be a good pick.
All right, and then Kasey, I'll start with you for number 15 here. He currently stands with Denver.
All right, so if you remember in my draft earlier, I had Denver trade up to 10, so I have Cleveland moving back here to 15, and they're going to get a bit lucky here too because I think they need an offensive tackle badly. The good news for them in my draft is there's still at least two pretty good ones on the board. I have them taking Andrew Thomas here for offensive tackle out of Georgia. I think he's a good prospect. And, I mean, the Browns got to hit one of these offensive tackles eventually. So what better time than now?
All right, Zach, what do you think happens for pick number 15?
So I don't know too much about this prospect, but I've only heard great things about Javon Kinlaw, and I do know the Broncos could use a defensive tackle, so I feel like they'll go best player available here. Missed out on the receivers they're looking for, so they'll just settle with arguably the best defensive player on the board still.
And Ben, anything to add here?
I have a different pick, actually. I have Denver taking C.J. Henderson. I think Zach had him going a lot earlier to the Falcons, but corner is one of the bigger needs for the Broncos. There isn't a receiver worth taking at 15. So they settle for Henderson, who probably the number 2 corner in this draft.
Can I just add one more thing here?
Absolutely.
If we don't trade up to 10, I agree with Ben and Zach. We shouldn't try to reach for maybe the 5th best, 4th best receiver in the class. If we miss out on the top 3, I think we should go either Kinlaw with defensive tackle because we need help up front to pair with Shelby Harris, and then cornerback. Well, we got to replace Chris Harris somehow, and A.J. Boye fills one slot, but we need another. We didn't really have a second corner last year either, so we would need one of those cornerbacks. So I could see a number of different corners going there, but Henderson's a good option.
I know we're only doing first round here, but I was kind of bored and I went out to 3 rounds. I have the Broncos taking a receiver in the 2nd round. I think that's the smarter move for him here. Receivers deep in this year's class.
Who is it, Ben?
Let me check. KJ Hamler out of our very own Pennsylvania State University.
If that comes down to a value pick, I'd be okay with that, but we'll see.
All right. Now, Ben, I'm going to start with you here for the pick number 16, which currently is with the Atlanta Falcons.
It's no surprise Falcons need a corner. I don't have them trading up here. They're a prime candidate to make a move up the board, though. But they get a little lucky here. Christian Fulton from LSU, falls into their laps at corner. It's really a toss-up from some people, Fulton and Henderson. I tend to think Henderson's a little better of a prospect, but Fulton's no slouch. Coming off a national title win with LSU. He fills a need. He's a value pick. Just works out here for the Falcons.
All right, now we'll throw it to Kasey here. What do you think happens 16?
So, same team, same player, but different pick. I have the Falcons taking C.J. Henderson. I think he falls to 16 personally, at least in my mock, because of the receivers and offensive tackles that were taken earlier. So I think the Falcons, again, get a little bit lucky, get a bit of a value pick here for a spot that they desperately have to fill, and that's cornerback because, let's face it, Atlanta's defense hasn't been anything close to good since they were last in the Super Bowl. So we'll see what happens.
All right, and we'll wrap up number 16 with Zach. What do you think happens here?
Well, because of my Falcons pick for C.J. Henderson earlier, I actually have Jacksonville picking here and reaping the benefits of the Becton pick. I have them taking Andrew Thomas here to solidify their offensive tackle spot as well.
All right, and then I'll start with you for number 17, which currently stands with the Dallas Cowboys.
As much as I hate to say it, I feel like Dallas always ends up getting just a really smart, good value pick, and I see them going with A.J. Epinesa here. Every time I watch them play against Penn State, I just would tell myself, this dude's going to be good. And I feel like that's almost every single player that Dallas ends up drafting. So I see them drafting him and him being like an all-pro somehow. He definitely has a very high ceiling.
You just made an entire city groan with that statement. Ben, what do you think happens with number 17?
Similar thought process to Zach. Dallas is a pretty solid roster. You can kind of go with whoever's fallen through the cracks. I have Kalavon Chason. I definitely pronounced that wrong. Out of LSU. Dallas, they like more traitsy defenders. And what Chason does, it just pops off. He is an absolute beast of an athlete. You've seen it past few years. Leighton Vander Esch out of a Group of 5 school. Taco Charleston out of no production whatsoever. I don't know how I feel about his chances in the NFL. I think he's a pretty good pass rusher, but watched a lot of tape of him versus Andrew Thomas, and Thomas got the better of him a lot. I don't know if that's Thomas just being a really good prospect or Chason being a bit overhyped, but I have him going 17.
All right, and Kasey, why don't you wrap up what happens in Dallas this year?
All right, so I'm going to give my try at pronouncing that name. I think I heard Chris Fowler say, watching college football, Kalavon Chason or something like that. One of the college football announcers, might have been a Nestler too. But I think it's just a position, good defensive player on the board. I mean, you could question, Dallas has a solid linebacker core. Problem is, it seems like they're always hurt, whether it's Vander Esch, Sean Lee, who's got to replace. That's a different position, obviously, middle linebacker. But I think they'll go outside here with Kalavon Chason and add a player from a championship-winning defense from a season ago to a defense that I think still is going to be pretty solid this year, even though they have some holes to fill.
All right, and then I'll ask you to start for pick number 18 here, Kasey, which is currently with the Miami Dolphins.
All right, so I have a guy who's been a little bit in the news lately for all the wrong reasons, but I think Miami's going to get a bit of a value pick here. Makai Becton, offensive tackle out of Louisville. I think he'll slip to here behind Thomas and Wills and all those guys. Say what you want about the whole the drug testing, where his I'm trying to think of the right terminology. His test got flagged, basically, at the Combine. That came out a little while ago, so that could scare some teams off. But Miami, they got to have an offensive tackle. This is the second of 3 picks, and I just can't see them going throughout this first round without getting somebody. I think Becton's a guy. I mean, he showed off some freakish numbers at the Combine. Obviously, now it's called a little bit into question because of that drug test. But I still think he's a guy with a lot of raw talent, and Miami's going to try and build him into what they can do.
Zach, anything there?
I have Chason going here. I feel like the Dolphins have plenty of picks, so there's no need to reach for anyone, and I think they just go best player available here.
All right, and Ben, want to wrap up what Miami does here for pick number 18?
Similar idea, different player. I have them going best player available. Javon Kinlaw somehow fell to them in my mock. I think he is one of my favorite prospects in this year's draft. He is just something else in the middle. And you just pair that with Wilkins up front, that's the foundation for a future great defense.
All right, and then Ben, I'll have you start for Las Vegas' second pick, which is at number 19.
All right, here's where we get a little wacky again. I was thinking, trying to get inside the mind of John Gruden, quarterback whisperer, Jordan Love. I pun intended, I love Jordan Love in this year's draft. I think what he's done at a not very good team in Utah State, he is amazing what he's done. He got so much better as an NFL-type passer this year, even if the numbers don't reflect it. Gets through his reads, makes incredible throws. And, yeah, he has lapses in judgment, but all rookies do. I think he's a far superior prospect to Justin Herbert, who went 16 picks ago. Gruden likes his quarterbacks. He thinks he can develop them, and this is a good one to develop.
All right, Kasey, what do you is yours as wacky as Ben's here?
I was tempted. I'll say that much. I was tempted to put Jordan Love here, but I think they've already gotten their guy. I think they've gotten their guy that's going to challenge Derek Carr this year in Marcus Mariota. I can see it. I'm not saying whether I don't know if I like it. I don't know if Marcus Mariota is the answer, but you look at what happened in Tennessee last year with Mariota getting supplanted by Tannehill. I think the Raiders have options. For what it's worth, they also have Deshaun Kaiser and Nathan Peterman on their rosters, guys who have starting experience. But I could see a quarterback. I don't think it's going to happen. I have them taking Cesar Ruiz, center out of Michigan, as potential heir apparent. I think, isn't Rodney Hudson still on the Raiders, Ben, or Zach?
I think so, but he's getting up there.
That's what – okay, yeah. I can't remember exactly, but I know he's getting up there, so I think they get his heir apparent, Ruiz out of Michigan. And I think they'll wait on a quarterback here at least for another couple rounds at least. I don't think they'll find their real franchise guy this year.
And Zach, want to wrap up pick number 19 here?
I can't really remember. Is Garyon Conley still on the Raiders?
No, he's on Houston.
He's not.
He's on
and
Houston.
even if he was, non-factor.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what I was getting at. It's basically you can now come to the consensus that he was just a total flop and dud, which is why I see them also moving on from him officially by getting Christian Fulton. I think Christian Fulton actually has very high upside, and I think that would be a good value pick for him here.
All right, and then I'll ask you to start for pick number 20 here, which currently is with the Jacksonville Jaguars.
I have another cornerback going here. I have Trayvon Diggs out of Alabama. I see them trying to kind of fill that missing hole of Jalen Ramsey. So, yeah. I don't know too much about that prospect, but I just see him as a good positional need.
Yeah. And Ben, what do you think happens for pick 20?
I have one of my more hated prospects in this year's draft, who's been mentioned before, Makai Becton. This has nothing to do with his performance at the Combine. I just watch him on tape, and he just misses with his first punch so often in pass protection. And you'll see people saying, oh, once defenders get into his body, he does a great job of kind of holding him there. That doesn't work in the NFL. If you let a guy get a hand on your chest, you're dead meat. And I see a guy who's fooled by games up front a lot. There's a lot of work he needs to do. And I don't have confidence that he can ever be a starting caliber left tackle. But he put up big numbers at the Combine. He's a big dude. He's a heck of a run blocker. So yeah, he goes number 20 to the Jaguars.
And you would know best about all those techniques that you just there mentioned.
Yep. Well,
Kasey,
not sure if I'd know best.
Hey, second team All-Star. I'll say that much.
Yeah. All right, Kasey, what do you have here for pick number 20?
So because of the trade earlier with Philadelphia, I actually have Jacksonville picking twice in a row here, and I'll start with number 20. And I think they're going to take Christian Fulton, cornerback out of LSU, kind of similar to what Zach said. They need that Jalen Ramsey type guy. He's gone. AJ Boye's gone now. But where they get that. This is where they get that potential replacement, or at least one of a potential replacement for Ramsey and Boye as they try to rebuild what was once known illustriously as Saxonville, but they were also pretty good in coverage. So we'll have to see how that unfolds, but that's what I think happens at number 20.
All right. Now, what about number 21, which was with the Philadelphia Eagles, but I don't think any of us expect that anymore.
Yeah, I have Jacksonville picking here as well. They could also trade, but considering who's on the board, and there's options here, you as Ben said, they need an offensive tackle, but I think they're going to look at pick number 21. They're going to look at their quarterback room, and they're going to say, does Jordan Love make that quarterback room better? And I think as much as I love Gardner Minshew and the Minshew mania, I think the answer is yes. I think they take Jordan Love here at number 21. They swipe him from maybe the Patriots or somebody else. They get him here at 21. He's a very raw prospect. I've heard comparisons to Patrick Mahomes. I've also heard people say he's not even on that level, but he does have a high ceiling. And so I think Jacksonville, this is an opportunity. Doug Marrone and company are fighting for their jobs this year, so rookie QB might not be ideal. But if he can come in and help turn things around, then it could be exactly what Jacksonville needs, almost as like a Hail Mary at this point to try and save their jobs. So I think Jacksonville makes an attempt. When's the last time they had a good quarterback? Mark Brunell? David Garrard?
Chad Henne.
I was going to say David Garrard.
Chad Henne's been a flop. Blaine Gabbert,
that one, yeah.
Bortles. Yeah, you just
one
hit on one eventually.
Bad year.
You got to hit on one eventually. So I think they will take Jordan Love here at 21.
All right, Zach, what happens for pick number 21 in your draft?
Well, because of the Eagles trade I had earlier for the 10th spot, I have the Browns picking here. And I saw rumors about this as a possible scenario. I definitely think this is a reach. But how about this? Cleveland to Cleveland. Ezra Cleveland to the Cleveland Browns. That's all I have to say.
That's all you have.
You don't have to say anything else.
I definitely think it's a reach, but I just see it being a classic Browns pick, and I just wanted to add it for the story, the name value alone.
Hey, sometimes they work out best. Ben, what do you have for number 21?
Much like Kasey, I have the Jags with a second pick in a row here. And who Zach had them taken at 20, I have them taken here at 21, Trayvon Diggs. It's no surprise they need a corner. And there are a couple corners, Diggs and Jeff Gladney and A.J. Terrell they could be looking at. I picked Diggs.
All right, and I'll ask you to start off for pick 22, where the Minnesota Vikings hold the spot.
So I have them going receiver here to fill the void left by Stephon Diggs. I have them going with Jalen Reagor out of TCU. He seems like a good complement to Adam Thielen. He's more of a physical guy. And maybe you can get Cousins to throw the ball more than 10 yards if you have a guy like Reagor to throw to.
All right, Kasey, what do you think happens here for pick 22?
Well, if he couldn't do that with Diggs, I'm not sure how he's going to do it with Reagor, but that's aside from the point. I have them going secondary here. I think, in the secondary backfield, Harrison Smith is getting up there in age. So I have them taking Grant Delpit out of LSU at safety. This is a rebuilding secondary that they have now. They need help outside with cornerbacks. And although there are some good ones on the board, I think Grant Delpit is you could argue the best player in the secondary still left on the board. National champion last year at LSU. I know he won some national awards as well. So he seems like a good talent, and I think Minnesota's going to try and take advantage of that and pick him up here at 22.
All right, Zach, what do you have here? Bring us home for pick 22.
All right, same colors, new team. I have Justin Jefferson going to the Vikings here. I feel like he would be the perfect wide receiver 2 pairing with Adam Thielen. and he could just come and slide right in to fill the missing hole that Trayvon Diggs once filled.
All right, and then I'll have you start us off with number 23, I'm curious to see what you all have for 23, which is with New England right now.
Well, you guys have mentioned him earlier already, but I see Jordan Love finally going here. I see him going at 23 to New England, and like New England always seems to do, they're going to turn him into an absolute stud. He's very raw, which is all that Bill Belichick needs to turn him into a 5-time Pro Bowler. Definitely a few rings in there. Yeah, that's probably my worst nightmare. But it always tends to happen with New England, so I expect it.
Ben, what do you think happens for pick 23?
I think one of the things lost in New England's offseason is, of course, they lost Tom Brady, one of the best quarterbacks of all time. But their linebacking core took a huge hit. And there are two really good off-ball linebackers left here, Patrick Queen out of LSU and Kenneth Murray out of Oklahoma. And really, for me, it's a toss-up between those two. I think Queen is a little more polished. Murray has the tendencies to over-pursue a little bit, and you can rein that in. But I think Belichick might look at the polish of Patrick Queen and prefer that a little bit. So I have Queen out of LSU.
And Kasey, what do you think happens for New England?
So I have them going up front here. I think they're going to pick A.J. Epinesa out of Iowa. He's still on my board in this draft to pick 23. I agree. I think they need some help up front with linebackers, but I think they also need some help on a defensive line that's got to get pressure to the quarterback. You know, new uniforms, new year, the post-Tom Brady era. Some might be inclined to say they'll pick a quarterback. And if Jordan Love falls here, I could see him going there. Even though I think Bill Belichick still would like a more traditional pocket passer, I have them maybe picking Jacob Eason in like the second or third round. And so with that said, I think they pick Epinesa here, one of the better defensive players still up on the board.
All right, and then from New England to New Orleans, Kasey, who is going 24?
All right, this man has made a living in some of my Madden franchises as a wide receiver, and now he's going to make a living catching passes from Drew Brees in potentially his final season in New Orleans. Laviska Shenault out of Colorado is going to be my guy here at 24. He's had some I know he just had core muscle surgery, so there's some concern about that. But he popped off the tape at Colorado playing there, and I think he's a guy. I mean, let's be honest. Can you even name New Orleans' second receiver right now behind Michael Thomas? Exactly.
Wait. It's Traquan Smith.
I think
you shouldn't know that.
But
did they sign? Are they the ones who signed Emmanuel Sanders?
Oh yeah, they did sign Sanders.
Okay, but that's true. Good catch, Zach. But Sanders is getting up there in age too, so they do eventually need, and they still need a third receiver. You could, as Ben mentioned, you could run Shenault on some jet motion stuff. I mean, heck, imagine a jet motion offense where you've got, Taysom Hill, Alvin Kamara in the backfield, and then Shenault coming across. That could be dangerous to defend. So I think they'll take Shenault here. Even with the Emmanuel Sanders pickup, and Drew Brees will have another weapon to throw the balls to in potentially his last year.
All right, Zach, where do you have New Orleans selecting here?
I see them going Kenneth Murray here. I feel like that linebacker room could definitely use more competition. I don't know too many standouts really there, and I feel like maybe they could turn him into something great years down the line.
Okay, and Ben?
I like that Murray pick a lot. It seems to make the most sense, but if you only have a year or two left of Brees, I think your main focus has to be making life as easy on him as possible. So even though it's not as big of a need as linebacker, I also have New Orleans going wide receiver. I have Justin Jefferson out of LSU falling to him. An ideal complement to Michael Thomas. The biggest knock on Jefferson for me is he is not a true X receiver. He's done like 80-some% of his damage out of the slot. And, I mean, you can line up in the slot next to Michael Thomas because he's your outside guy, get Jefferson in the slot, and that's nightmares right there.
And now I'll ask you to start off with the Minnesota Vikings' second first-round pick here at number 25.
So with their first pick, I had them taking Jalen Reagor out of TCU. With their second pick, I have them taking Reagor's college teammate, cornerback Jeff Gladney, out of TCU as well. It was mentioned earlier, I think it was Harrison Smith mentioned, I know he's a safety, but that secondary as a whole starting to get kind of old. Xavier Rhodes, real steep decline. And I think that's, now that they addressed receiver, I think that's one of their bigger holes. And Gladney's a pretty good value here at 25.
All right, and then I'll go to Kasey here. What happens number 25?
So Ben had them going Jalen Reagor at 22. I have them going Jalen Reagor at 25. They get that replacement for Trayvon Diggs on the outside. They take Reagor in this loaded receiver class, give Kirk Cousins some weapons, and let him see. Let's finally see. Can Kirk Cousins be a franchise quarterback? He couldn't get it done with Diggs. Can he get it done with a rookie? Ben's saying no. I personally tend to agree with him a little bit, but let's see what happens. Minnesota, you could make an argument their Super Bowl window is still open, but it's closing slowly, and they got to get a playmaker, and I think Reagor's that guy.
Zach, anything to add?
Well, with their last pick, I had them addressing wide receiver with Justin Jefferson. Now I see them going and addressing the other side of the ball. They lost a defensive end this offseason, right?
Griffin, right?
Yeah, I think so.
But they lost him, yeah.
So I see them going Yetur Gross-Matos here. I just see him sliding right in there and just filling that need.
All right, and then Zach, I'll start with you for Miami's third first-round pick at number 26.
Well, similar to what Miami's been doing so far and what I kind of see them doing this whole draft, I see them going best player available here, also feeling in need of getting Grant Delpit at safety out of LSU. I honestly, a lot of people are kind of not as high on him as I am, but I see him being a stud. I've been following him for the past 2 years now, and there's definitely areas of concern with him, but I think he has a very high ceiling to be one of those great LSU D-backs.
Ben, what do you have going for Miami's third pick?
I have them taking one of the big guys up front to protect their new franchise quarterback, Tua. I have Austin Jackson out of USC. I think he's a little on the raw side for an offensive tackle prospect, but I see a lot more potential in him, and I liked a lot more of the stuff he does on film than Makai Becton. And in Miami, it's a good situation-ish. I mean, he doesn't have to start on the left side right away. I know Julian Davenport is BAD bad, but at least he has NFL experience at left tackle. He can play there for half a season or a season, get Jackson warmed up to the NFL on the right side maybe, then move him over to the left side as a sophomore.
And Kasey, what do you have going 26?
All right, so first pick, they went with a quarterback. Second pick, they went with an offensive tackle. I think they stay on the offensive side of the ball here, and you could argue this is a bit of a reach, but their starting tailback near the end of last season was Patrick Laird. I know they brought in Jordan Howard. I think that dude is damaged goods. So I think they get – I mean, this running back class, it's very much a toss-up. There's no elite tailback like there have been the past couple years. But the guy that jumps off the page most, guy out of Wisconsin, Jonathan Taylor. I think the Dolphins completely remake that offensive backfield with Tua and Jonathan Taylor. And I know he's not a great pass catcher, but what he did as a rusher at Wisconsin really speaks for itself. And so I think Miami, you could say it's a bit of a reach, but I think it's a spot they need to fill to really get their offense humming and give Tua some help there when he does have to play.
And we'll move on to pick number 27 now, which stands with Seattle. Kasey, I'm going to ask you to start this one off.
All right, so I've had a couple different opinions on this pick. Same position, but different player. When I did my first mock draft a few days ago, I had Julian Okwara going here out of Notre Dame. And I'm good friends with a Seattle fan, and I sent it to him, and he said, why no Yetur Gross-Matos for us? And the more I thought about it, the more I kind of agree. I think Seattle's been tied to Yetur Gross-Matos for a while as a future Nittany Lion. I want to see him do well as friends with a Seattle fan. I'm also invested that way. So it's kind of a double whammy, and I'm rooting for Yetur, and I want to see if he can get it done picking at number 27. I think that's who Seattle takes because they've got to shore up that front end of the defensive line. especially with Jadeveon Clowney gone now, rushing from the edge. I mean, who even is their defensive line at this point? I think it's like Jaron Reed, Poona Ford, and Ziggy Ansah. I don't know. People who aren't relevant, really, at this point in time. Yetur Gross-Matos could be a welcome exception and someone we actually remember on that defensive line for Seattle.
All right, Zach, what do you have Seattle doing here for number 27?
Well, I had Yetur going 25 for me in my draft, which leaves Julian Okwara right there at 27. I see Seattle definitely going with defensive end. And honestly, I'd be lying to you if I said I've seen film of this man. I don't know anything about him besides seeing his name constantly appearing at this selection. So I feel like the professionals know it more than me.
All right, Ben, what do you have here?
I have some outrage at Kasey for disrespecting the good name of Poona Ford, but I also have Julian Okwara here. They desperately need pass rush help, especially if Clowney isn't going to be back, which it looks like he might not be. I haven't seen a ton of film on this guy, but I watched pretty much the whole Notre Dame-Georgia game, so that's good film against high-level competition. And he didn't quite pop off the screen like some prospects, but he was more than solid. Seattle likes solid.
All right, and then I'll ask you to start off number 28, which is with the Baltimore Ravens, Ben.
So this pick was a little tricky because Baltimore's got a pretty darn good team. Then I was thinking, what do good teams do? They draft good players at less valuable positions before they need them. So I have Cesar Ruiz, the center out of Michigan. Could also play guard. I think he's a really good player. Interior O-line isn't as valuable of a spot in the draft, but Baltimore, they can use this pick on a less valuable position for a premium talent.
Kasey, what do you have the Ravens doing?
Yeah, and they don't have Marshall Yanda anymore, which is important there to keep in mind. But I have them going with an outside linebacker here. They're still trying to find their replacement to T-Sizzle, Terrell Suggs. So I think they get a Patrick Star, pun intended, Patrick Queen out of LSU. I'd pick number 28. I was torn here between either Patrick Queen or Kenneth Murray. I don't have Kenneth Murray going. I think he'll be an early second-round selection if he doesn't get picked in the first. I really had it as a toss-up here. It could be either or, but I think Queen, as Ben said, is a little more polished, so I think Baltimore goes with him here.
All right, and Zach, who goes number 28?
Well, I have Patrick Queen. I feel like Harbaugh definitely would turn him into a stud in that defense, so throw him in there.
All right, and then I'll start with you for number 29, which is currently with Tennessee.
Well, the first time I did this mock, I was absolutely stumped, and this is my second mock, and I still was absolutely stumped, so I actually did the remaining 3 picks and then came back to this. And the general consensus, I've seen Ross Blacklock a lot. I do not know who he is, but I just threw him in there because I can't just have a missing pick at 29. So there you go.
All right, and Ben, what do you have for the Tennessee Titans?
Same pick, bit more reasoning behind it, I guess. Much like Baltimore, pretty solid roster top to bottom, and they can spend on a guy who's a good talent at a less valuable position at D-tackle. I love what Blacklock did at TCU. And with Vrabel, their head coach, defensive-minded guy, a little more old-school guy, he knows that you start building in the trenches. He's going to be a piece in those trenches for a while.
And Kasey, why don't you finish up pick number 29?
So I was tempted to go up front here with this pick Ross Blacklock out of TCU because they got to replace Terrell Casey. But I saw one name stand out to me on this board that I have remaining here that hadn't been taken. And I remember that Tennessee lost Logan Ryan in free agency. Or actually, he still hasn't signed anywhere, but he hasn't signed with Tennessee currently. So I think they're going to go a little bit cheaper, find a good, solid rookie in Trayvon Diggs out of Alabama, who I think could fall here. And if he does, I think Tennessee would need to take him because he looked good in college. And I think Tennessee, they want to keep this defense going that they have on the outside. I think they can address up front, perhaps in some of the later rounds, but right here, I think they take a cornerback.
And then I'll ask you, what does Green Bay do for the next pick, which is number 30?
I was very torn on this pick. Originally, when I did my first mock, I had Brandon Ayuk going here out of Arizona. It could happen, and it's possible because Green Bay doesn't really have a guy opposite Devontae Adams, but they also need cornerbacks. So I think they go with Jeff Gladney here out of TCU. And again, Green Bay, it seems like they draft corners every year. Some of them they hit on. They hit on Jair Alexander. And then some of them, guys like Kevin King, haven't panned out quite as well. So I think they'll take Gladney here, if nothing else, to add some depth and become a guy that can potentially, down the road, become a starter.
Zach, who goes and becomes a cheesehead at Green Bay?
Well, it's been a few years since Green Bay's had that true, legitimate wide receiver too, and I see this being the year that they finally change that. I see them going with Laviska Shenault, and I really like this pick. I can just see that. I can just see him in that offense with Aaron Rodgers slinging it.
And Ben, what about you?
Well, seeing as I had Shenault go 17 picks ago, I don't think there's a great value at receiver here for Green Bay. I wanted to try to force something in here, but with such a deep receiver class, I had them waiting to the second round. I believe Chase Claypool out of Notre Dame at 62 off the top of my head. But another thing they need is they need a replacement for Brian Bulaga at tackle. So he's not going to Cleveland in this one. I have Ezra Cleveland. I'm not the biggest fan of his. I don't know if he's ready to play right away. Doesn't show a lot of strength at the point of attack on film. But solid player. If you give him some time to develop, I think he could turn into a real solid option.
All right, and then I'll ask you to start off with pick number 31 with San Francisco.
So San Francisco needs wide receivers and corners. I already gave him a wide receiver. So time for a corner. I have A.J. Terrell out of Clemson. Richard Sherman, he's getting old. He had an Achilles injury recently. Those tend to shorten careers. So good teams will draft a guy, let him develop before they have to be the number one guy at their position.
Kasey, what do you have here for 31? Sorry.
You're good. Take what Ben said, copy, paste it. Same guy. AJ Terrell, number 31. They need a corner. Simple as that.
And Zach, what do you have?
Well, I actually have San Francisco actually doubling up on O-line. I believe, didn't they just release their guard, their starting right guard? What is it, like Mike Person?
Yeah, I think they did.
Well, I see them going with the versatile Cesar Ruiz out of Michigan. I think he can honestly play center or slide into guard, and they can develop him.
All right, and then we're gonna finish this draft, this first round up with pick number 32, Super Bowl champion Kansas City. Zach, start us off here.
I love this pick. I have them going Jonathan Taylor here. Pure runner. Like mentioned before, not that exceptional at pass catching, but I think he could always develop that. Now, casual fans will be like, oh, what about Damian Williams? He went off in the Super Bowl. Yeah, but how about before that? I think they need to just get that long-awaited replacement to Jamal Charles that they had years ago. And I think Jonathan Taylor will be the next great running back in Kansas City.
Ben?
We started with a lot of the same picks, and I guess me and Zach are ended with the same pick. I also have Jonathan Taylor. There are obvious concerns with him. Number one, didn't really do much as a pass catcher, but that could just be the system he's in Wisconsin. My bigger concern with him is just the amount of touches he had in college. Running backs, they have a finite amount of carries on their legs, and he's had quite a few of them. But he's not your typical Wisconsin just bowling ball between the tackles guy. He is a beast. He is going to be good at the NFL level, I think, or he'll be Jordan Howard.
Either
So, like, at the line of mediocrity.
Yes. he will, at the very least, be good enough to be in a platoon. And if he plays at kind of his lowest level that he could reach, then he's still a solid option for the Chiefs with Damian Williams and the boy Darwin Thompson.
All right, Kasey. What do you have as your last pick here?
To sleep on my guy, Darrell Williams. Okay, so I can't have Jonathan Taylor going here because he already went to Miami. But I do see Kansas City taking a running back here, and I was really torn because, on the running back position itself, because as mentioned, there's not really that elite guy this year, so it's tough to tell who to really go with. If some corners, members of the secondary fall, I think they can wind up with them. Ultimately, though, I decided on a running back, and I've been really split between two guys, J.K. Dobbins out of Ohio State and DeAndre Swift out of Georgia. Ultimately, I just have this feeling they're going to go with Dobbins. I think he had, if I remember correctly, over like 2,000 yards scrimmage last year, I think, for Ohio State. I could be wrong on that, but he was a beast for them, along with Justin Fields in that backfield. And, I mean, really, you look at Kansas City's offense, and the only weak point is running back. So if they get J.K. Dobbins and turn him into the stud that Kareem Hunt was supposed and budding to be, then that's good luck stopping that, basically.
All right, and that concludes the first round of the draft. I'm going to ask you guys for any final thoughts on each other's drafts or your own. So I'll leave it open, and whoever starts talking can talk.
Well, Ben, you were right about us having a lot of the same picks. I was thinking that same thing at the beginning of the draft. It seemed that way, and it just kept going on and on. So, yeah, we had close to the same draft for the most part, except for some glaring changes such as Laviska Shenault. That was kind of a big gap there between those two picks.
In my defense, no one thought Cleveland Ferrell was going number 4 last year.
Sure.
I highly doubt Shenault goes at 13. I'd more likely see him in the second round.
Book this.
But
If he goes 3 days from now, I think the biggest domino to fall, well, biggest dominoes, plural, and there's a lot of plural, to fall in this class are going to be the wide receivers. I think that's really going to determine, especially in the mid rounds, once you get past some of the consensus picks, guys like Burrow, Young, Tua and Herbert, we feel like are going to either Miami or the Chargers. It's just a matter of which one. But once you get down to 9 or 10 and you get around all those receivers, it's going to be so intriguing to see who trades up, who stays where they're at, who picks a receiver, who waits for maybe a value pick in the second round, because there are some good ones, or later on in the draft. And that, I mean, and again, that could cause, some players that you wouldn't expect to maybe fall. Guys like Jedrick Wills, I've seen him boxed at number 4 to the Giants. I had him going 14th to the Buccaneers. The wide receiver, the hunger for that could really determine and set a lot of things off in motion that could make this draft very intriguing to watch when it gets to its mid stages of the first round.
Well said. Well said. All right. Well, that concludes the first and final round of the 2020 Hempfield NFL draft discussion. Some of these picks pretty much went exactly as we expected, especially in the beginning. And then we got to some wacky ones as you guys all had some interesting opinions there. But that's all we have for you guys today at the HSDTV7. This is a NFL draft special from the experts and myself. Goodbye, everybody.